Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. First full length video of the year 2025. And we're here to talk about Monday Night Raw on Netflix. Well, recently, Monday Night Raw on January the 4th celebrated its 32nd anniversary. For 32 years, Monday Night Raw has been on the air since January the 4th, 1993. And 2 days later, they celebrated their move to Netflix, the first ever weekly streaming show on a Netflix, on a platform such as Netflix, ever a live streaming show. David says it was awesome last night. I gotta agree with you, David. It was awesome. It was a new beginning for the WWE. It was setting the tone once again. WWE are the trendsetters, man. Um, they were back in the 80s the first to do pay-per-view, right? Back in 1987, 88. They were the first to do um, streaming ever in 2014, before Disney Plus, before Peacock, before any of that. They were there doing it with the WWE Network. And they were some of the first on the internet back in the 1990s. And once again, they have become, yes, January 11th, sorry. David's correct. It's not January 4th, January 11th, 1993, when Raw debuted. So Raw's anniversary, 32nd anniversary, hasn't happened yet. It was about to happen. But anyway, they were the first to do a lot of stuff. You could make the argument in many ways that professional wrestling popularized television, that professional wrestling popularized cable television in the 1980s and television in the late 40s and early 50s. You can make that argument. And once again, they are moving from cable television to streaming. And as David said, it was awesome last night. It was something spectacular. We begin the show with an awesome opening package. Like, Kevin Dunn isn't there anymore, but the WWE production team is still top notch in capturing the feels. Triple H does the voiceover, and it's a guy. Well, they begin with a cold open. Michael Cole's there, Pat McAfee. They show the Judgment Day coming in. They show Seth Rollins, CM Punk. They show Rhea Bloody Ripley, uh, coming in. So obviously these are the two main events. These are the two events that they're really leaning into. And then they go to this video package. And the video package is basically a history of not just WWE, but professional wrestling in general. They show a carving of ancient Greeks wrestling. They show wrestling from the early days, the 1800s, the early 1900s. And Triple H basically is telling you that wrestling has always been with us, but it was television. They show an old school TV, like one of the first generation TVs with Gorgeous George on there. And then it moves from there to like Bruno Sammartino in the 60s and Billy Graham in the 70s and Hulk Hogan in the 80s. And then moving on and on and on, showing us some of the greatest highlights in the history of professional wrestling. Ric Flair coming out for the first Starrcade in 1983. Hulk Hogan body slamming Andre the Giant, which is always there. Shawn Michaels winning the Boyhood Dream. The Rock, first thing you smell what The Rock is cooking back in 1996-97. David saying he was 1 year old. I was 9 years old, David, so I'm a little bit older than you. And that's when I started. That was the year I really started paying attention to professional wrestling in 83. But anyway, they're going through all these great moments in wrestling. And as they're doing that, this guy is painting a picture of each wrestler, painting a picture of The Undertaker, painting a picture of Shawn Michaels, painting a picture of Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, The Ultimate Warrior, Andre the Giant, Bruno Sammartino, the NWO, John Cena, Randy Orton, Batista, Cody Rhodes, from last year. All these wrestlers, basically representing a swath of the entire history of professional wrestling. And then Triple H stands in the middle of the ring. And he tells us that the Netflix era has begun, and basically giving us an overview of everything that we're about to see. And then The Rock comes out. Now, many people, it was a great show. Many people criticize, I'm mentioning to get David's thoughts on this if he's still with us, criticize The Rock's performance in this because The Rock comes out not as the heel final boss, not as his heel character from last year. He comes out as just Dwayne Johnson, regular old schmegler Dwayne Johnson. He has the People's title with him from the Hall of Fame last year with Muhammad Ali's wife, but he is regular schmegler Dwayne Johnson. And he speaks to Cody. He congratulates Cody. He says, give a shout out to your mom for you, referencing last year, Mama Rhodes thing, right? All that shit from last year. But Cody's in the audience and him and Cody are cool. So it's like, dude, like what happened to last year? What happened to what you whispered in Cody's ear? What was the deal with that? All of a sudden now, Rock's a babyface. He's coming out, he's slapping hands with the crowd. It was really weird. And I was like, well, where are they going with this? Last time we saw The Rock was at Bad Blood. And he didn't pick a side between the OG bloodline and the new bloodline. So it's like, well, we don't know where he stands when it comes to his allegiance or if he's going to really do anything. People are looking forward to maybe The Rock and Cody. Obviously, that might not happen. Maybe The Rock and Roman at WrestleMania 41. We don't know where it's going or if The Rock's even going to do anything. We know that he's a board member on TKO, so basically he can do whatever the hell he wants. He was slapping hands with Ari Emanuel and Ari Emanuel's brother Ezekiel. I didn't see Rahm Emanuel. Rahm wasn't in the audience, but anyway, he gave a shout out to the Netflix, the CEOs of Netflix, basically giving a shout out to what I called all his corporate overlords, the Netflix bosses, the TKO bosses, all his bosses, basically, The Rock doing that corporate thing. But like I said, as Dwayne Johnson, not as his character, The Rock. So it was pretty weird. So anyway, we go into Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa. Now, as far as censorship, people said, well, censorship is not going to be a thing in Netflix because it's not like regular TV. Like, you know how, like when we watched SmackDown on Fox these past 5 years, they would censor certain shit. They would block certain shit out when they would do certain stuff. So, but Netflix is different. It's a streaming service. People pay to be on it. So I wonder how much they would let slip. The Rock earlier, he was doing, finally The Rock has come back. And he was like, no, that's bullshit. Finally, The Rock has come back. And he said the word bullshit, right? So I'm like, okay, they're going to let a lot of shit slide. Well, during the match with Solo Sikoa, the fans chanted "fuck you, Solo," and people, and Netflix didn't block it out. So I'm like, oh wow, they're really letting a lot of shit slide. But this match between Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns, a lot of false finishes, interference from Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu comes in, interferes, but it doesn't do any good. I'm like, shit, Roman ain't doing the job. Not on the first night at Netflix. Yeah, he ain't doing the job. So he wins. Roman Reigns with help from the Usos and Sami Zayn. Then The Rock comes out, gives the Ula Fala, puts the Ula Fala on him. He looks at The Rock, and The Rock looks at him. still tension existing between the two. So I don't know what they're building to. And then they go to a backstage segment where The Rock is on Instagram and he's slapping hands with Cody, slapping hands with Travis Scott, who was a musical guest there last night. But he doesn't slap the hand of Triple H. He leaves Triple H hanging. So a lot of fans are reading into this and saying, well, maybe this is an indication that The Rock is still kind of heelish, still kind of has heat with Triple H in some sort of way. We don't know. You know what I mean? Only time will tell. But he put the Ulafala around Roman, and Roman and Paul Heyman are still together, even though there's some indication that even Paul Heyman, may soon be turning heel. But we do know some news about Roman Reigns. He will be in the Royal Rumble on January the 27th in Indianapolis, Indiana, because there was a backstage segment with Paul Heyman saying, you got to give him something. You got to reestablish them basically in the island of relevancy, And he said, put me in for January 27th, the Royal Rumble, Indianapolis. So Roman isn't entering in the Royal Rumble. And another person that isn't entered in the Royal Rumble is John Cena. John Cena was rumored to be there, and he did show up there, and he got a rousing ovation. People love Cena now. It's no longer the divided loyalty fan base of fuck you. I mean, not fuck you, Cena. Let's go Cena. Cena sucks. Let's go Cena. Cena sucks. It's no longer that. Cena got a rousing rendition with his new merchandise. The last time is now, basically, and he talks about his streak. And he goes, I'm not talking about Roman Reigns' streak. I'm not talking about the streak of The Undertaker. I'm not talking about Gunther's streak with the Intercontinental title. No, I'm talking about my losing streak that, lately, I haven't won a match in many years. And it's true. He fought WrestleMania 39. He fought Austin Theory and lost. He fought Solo Sikoa at one of the Saudi Arabia shows and lost. So he's been on basically a losing streak for a while now. And he hasn't had any luck. He says nothing's really going to change that. I know a lot of people want to see me win the championship for the 17th time, breaking Ric Flair's record. But I don't know if that's going to happen unless I win the Royal Rumble. So he announced himself, John Cena, as another entrant into the Royal Rumble. So it's very interesting. Maybe The Rock will put himself in the Royal Rumble. Then you have The Rock, Roman, and Cena. And all three in the Royal Rumble, three big major stars. It could be really stacked. The first really stacked one since like 2017 when Goldberg was in, when The Undertaker was in it and stuff. And there's talk online too, speaking of Goldberg, there's talk online that Goldberg, might be considering the Royal Rumble. So who knows? We'll see. Come Indianapolis, come the Royal Rumble. We'll see who is in it. But for now, all we know is John Cena and Roman Reigns, both in the Royal Rumble, obviously. And who will win and who will go for Gunther's title and who will go for Cody Rhodes' title. We shall see. But anyway, we go to then the women's match with Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. And this was very satisfying. Rhea Ripley manhandled Liv Morgan, freaking doing this powerbomb spot on a table that looked like it broke Liv Morgan in half. It was some brutal shit. Then she puts her up for the riptide, Boom, pins her 1, 2, 3. Rhea Ripley is once again your WWE Women's Champion. And not only that, looks like you're finally putting an end to, guys, the feud between her and Dominic Mysterio. Because after she wins the title, really emotional. Rhea Ripley looked hella good last night. Rhea Ripley, sexy as fuck. As always, you guys know I love her. And last night was no different. Her ass was on smash, looking hella, looking hella nice right there. You know what I mean? And she was really stunning. So, but I wasn't the only one thinking that. Dominic Mysterio was thinking that too. After Liv Morgan lost, Dom tried to get back with Rhea. He sneaks up behind her, he tries to give her a hug. Pat McAfee and Michael Cole are getting on him. And he's like, Pat McAfee's like, that rat bastard. Dom trying to get back with Rhea. And she kicks him in the balls, gives him a riptide. And this appears to be the end of Rhea Ripley's feud with Dominic Mysterio. And many people are disappointed because they wanted to see an intergender match between them. But with all this controversy about transgender, and I know, Rhea's not trans, but I'm saying like all this controversy about, should men and women be in matches together with the trans athletes and stuff. That's heavily a politicized issue, especially with the Olympics, the boxing issue with the Algerian boxer last year. It's not the right climate for it, right? WWE has never really done it. I mean, they did it, years ago in 1999 with Chyna and Jeff Jarrett. But even then it was criticized, and Chris Jericho had a couple of matches back in the day with Chyna too, but that was a different time, the 90s. This wasn't a big issue like it is now, heavily politicized, so they didn't really go that route. They kind of had to use Liv Morgan as like a representative of Dominic Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio's grievances towards Rhea Ripley. But it was interesting to see where did they go from here with Dom, because he's only been engaged ever, in feuds, either, working since he's been in professional wrestling, either with his dad or with Rhea Ripley or with Liv Morgan. He's never really had a really storyline on his own without the Judgment Day or without his dad that he has really stood on his own 2 feet. He has a lot of heat as a heel, but what can he do going forward that will sustain him and bring him to the next level where he needs to be as an independent? You know what I mean? So the next match is Jey Uso facing off against Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre, they talk about how he positioned himself as the bloodline hunter, the avenger of the bloodline. And that was similar to Kevin Owens, which I didn't mention. Kevin Owens interfered in the match with Solo and Roman Reigns because he also had beef with Roman Reigns back when Roman Reigns was a heel. Coming in, he gave Roman Reigns a stunner and tried to cost Roman the match, but Cody Rhodes came out and they typed up the Cody Rhodes ladder match, Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens at the Royal Rumble. You know what I mean? So this match was similar with Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre basically dominated Jey Uso throughout the night, but I'll be honest, this match was decent, but I really wasn't paying attention. I just felt like it was kind of short. The entrance was what I really cared about. Travis Scott coming out with with Jey Uso. A lot of what Jey Uso does to me, like the whole yeet thing, like they made a big thing with Pat McAfee and Michael Cole doing the yeet yeet, and like Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, running out of breath and doing the yeet, and then like Drew McIntyre later in the match, mocking it basically. Um, you know, this match could have been better, really, in all honesty. But they're still running with Jey Uso really big. As far as the backstage segments, they did two that I saw. Um, the New Day, the New Day, uh, just Xavier and Big E. I mean Xavier and Kofi. They were going to talk about how they turned on Big E. Right, but Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias, and this Raw was packed with a lot of celebrities. You saw Topanga and uh, Will Friedle, Daniel Fishel and Will Friedle of Boy Meets World fame. You saw Michael J. You saw Fluffy, of course. Anybody that had anything to do with Netflix, they co-promoted with a lot of stuff that they're doing on Netflix. Basically, the same shit that they did with Squid Games at the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. Trying to co-promote uh, their Netflix properties with um, this live event that they got going on. They did the same thing here. So Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias, he has um, a Netflix comedy special coming up, and he's of course a big WWE fan. He's there with the big gold belt, and Kofi and Big E, start putting him down, and Otis comes to save him, comes to his rescue, whatever. And another big backstage segment is hyping up next week's Monday Night Raw, where Adam Pearce announces to Chad Gable. Chad Gable with American Made comes out, and he's basically saying that he doesn't have a problem with any of the luchadors. So Adam Pearce books a match with him and Pentagon next week, and that's part of the main event next week, as well as Damian Priest taking on Finn Balor next week as well. So former Judgment Day partners will be taking on each other next week on Monday Night Raw. And as far as this week, it ended with CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. Now, I'll circle back and go back to some of the reactions that I found surprising with some of the people that showed up. Gunther had a pre-tape promo that he did that was pretty good. He got a pretty good reaction. He wasn't on the show. Neither was Cody Rhodes. Neither one of the champions, Cody Rhodes or Gunther, was on the show, which was very odd to me. But the other guest appearance that got a huge reaction was after the Rhea Ripley match, after she gives Dom the rib tie, who comes out but The Undertaker. His dong hits, right? And he comes down the American Badass music with his Harley, Rhea Ripley celebrating on the stage, and Rhea Ripley hold the fist up like this. They hold the fist up, and the fans love it. The fans react to The Undertaker. And another person that showed up last night was Hulk Hogan. Just like it's been doing a lot in these pay-per-views. You have the Prime Energy drink, Logan Paul's drink, that is co-promoted with WWE on the rings now. Covered canvases, something that Vince never liked. But, it was done sometimes with WCW, like the sold-out pay-per-view, the first one in 97, and throughout like 94, 95 in WCW, they would just cover it up with WCW, but never co-promotions, never other things. But this Raw, they did it for the first time ever. It had a new look and a new feel to it, kind of like a real fight feel like UFC's doing, because Like I said, now they're branded with UFC. They have more of a UFC type feel. You see UFC type productions. You see champions sitting in the audience like Cody Rhodes was, like you always see in the UFC events. It's different. The camera angles are different, and that's one of the differences. But they weren't just doing it with Prime Energy this time. They were doing it with real American beer. Um, uh, Hulk Hogan's beer. Hulk Hogan's beer brand. So Hulk Hogan is promoting this beer, of course, that he came out with last year, right? And he comes out, his music, a real American, him with his former manager, Jimmy Hart, manager slash former manager slash best friend Jimmy Hart. The music hits, and the fans just start booing him. The fans boom out of the building, chanting, "You fuck Hulk Hogan," right? And it's like, where did this reaction come from? We saw him get a similar reaction when he showed up at WrestleMania 37 to co-host with Titus O'Neil. So a lot of the reason why fans are giving, a lot of the reason that I'm hearing online why fans are giving this reaction that they're talking about is because Hulk Hogan supported Donald Trump at the 2024 election. We know that. He spoke at the RNC. He accompanied famous UFC fighter slash Trump supporter Colby Covington to his fight, carrying the flag with him, right? He's been a Trump guy. He was a Trump guy through and through. He said that he was going to drop the leg on Kamala and kick her out of the country and shit when he was on the campaign trail for Trump, talking about physically threatening Kamala Harris when he was on the campaign trail for Trump. So he was saying some crazy stuff, really going out and out for Trump. And this is Kamala Harris's state. This is California, right? This is her home state, a really blue state. And not only that, the home state where she was from. So on the same day where Donald Trump gets certified, where Kamala Harris is the sitting vice president, has to certify him as the incoming president on January 20th, is the exact same day that Hulk Hogan, one of his biggest campaigners, comes out in a California crowd and gets the shit booed out of him. And there's another crazy dimension to it. This is Hulk Hogan's gimmick state. Hulk Hogan he's born in Tampa, Florida, right? Well, he was born in Atlanta, born in Georgia, but he grew up in Tampa, Florida, right? And that's where he's really from. That's where he broke into the business in Florida Championship Wrestling. Back in this in the 70s, Eddie Graham's territory. But as he was built, at least when he was in the AWA from 82, and then the WWE from 82 to 83, and then the WWE from 84 to 93, and then even WCW from 94 to 2000, and then even again WWE from 2002 to like now. He's always been his build. He's always been built from Venice Beach, California. Now, Cena talked about his promos, the connection that he had with California, how he broke into the business for the first time in California with Rick Bassman and UPW, right? Before going down to OVW and then inevitably to WWE. But Hogan was built from Venice Beach, California. That was Hogan's gimmick hometown. Like the Road Warriors, they're really from Minneapolis, but their gimmick hometown was Chicago. So, but here's Hogan in real life getting booed out of the building, people chanting "fuck you, Hogan" to him because of his political views, because he's a Trump supporter. But to me, like, it really got me because, like, Undertaker supported Trump. Like, Undertaker had Trump on his podcast. Undertaker and Glenn Jacobs, his gimmick brother / Kane, they supported Trump. They're Republicans, obviously. Mayor Jacobs is mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. They're heavily tied in with Trump as well. But Taker didn't get booed. I think it's more to it. I think really what people were booing was his shameless plugging of the beer. Like he came out with a real American beer shirt, really pushing it home. So here, in a flip turn of events, in the state where he actually was built from, in a state where at WrestleMania 2 he fought King Kong Bundy in a cage and beat King Kong Bundy. Now they're booing him, but in his actual home state, on July the 7th, 1996, was where he turned heel. And on January the 6th, 2025, is when the fans turned heel on him. They finally got sick of Hogan's act over the years of lying, of his political affiliations, his racism, his everything. Finally, they got sick of Hulk Hogan and they booed Hulk Hogan out of the building. But again, they did it in Florida in not only in July 7th, 1996, when he turned heel with the NWO, but also WrestleMania 37 was in Tampa, his very hometown, and they booed him there. So I just think Hulk Hogan has kind of worn out his welcome. He kind of, like, in 96, when he and Randy Savage first left, they came out with these characters that we talked about him, the Billionaire Test Wrestling War Room, the Huckster and the Nacho Man, and they used to make fun of Hogan. But Hogan is kind of that version of the Huckster, what he was as a caricature in the Huckster in those skits. He kind of is in real life now. When you see him, you're like kind of sick of seeing him. Even though he did tremendously a lot for the WWF and for wrestling in general, he was wrestling in the modern era after Gorgeous George was wrestling's biggest crossover star. If you wanted to create a Mount Rushmore of wrestling overall, like say wrestling starts like in 1845 with William Muldoon, right, winning his first Greco-Roman wrestling championship in 1845 until like now, and you wanted to create a list of greatest pro wrestlers, Hogan would have to be in your top 5, along with Stone Cold Steve Austin, along with The Rock, along with Jim Londos, and along with Frank Gotch and Gorgeous George and the Strangler Lewis. Those guys, at least in your top 10, right? Hogan would have to be in that list. Of course, no doubt about it. But I think with those guys, Gorgeous George, he retired pretty late, but he didn't wear out his welcome. Frank Gotch, he retired pretty early and died from aremic poisoning in like 1915 when he was going to make his comeback in 16. Londos, I'm not sure what really happened to him, but he kind of got out unscathed, and that was before television, so wrestling was pretty localized back then. And The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, they were out of the business pretty early with The Rock in movies and Austin out injured after 2003. So all these other big crossover wrestling celebrities were out pretty much before they wore out their welcome. Hogan was the only one that really stood the longest. Even John Cena, he was longer on top than Hogan from 05 to 15. But, fans didn't really start appreciating him until he stepped away from wrestling. You know what I mean? So, and then speaking of stepping away from wrestling, CM Punk was away from the WWE since 2014 to now. His first Raw wrestling back. What a tremendous match this was between him and Seth Rollins. A lot of back and forth action. Punk got hit with the go to sleep by Rollins. Then Punk hit the curb stomp on Seth Rollins. These two have tremendous chemistry together. At the post-fight press conference, they brought it up to CM Punk. Who would he like to face at WrestleMania 41? Somebody threw out John Cena, somebody threw out The Rock, and he said both those guys, big paydays attached to them. And it's true, both those guys, tremendous crossover celebrities, having a lot of clout. But whether they put them with Rock, Cena, Roman Reigns, whoever, in WrestleMania 41, or even another match for Seth, these two, tremendous chemistry. Indeed, Seth Rollins is a new Shawn Michaels, if you ask me. He rises to the occasion each and every time, no matter who or what. And he got busted open the hard way, man. That was one of the last shots I saw when Raw went off the air. Both he and Roman Reigns both got busted up the hard way. Who would think that when the Shield first broke up, that Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins would be the guy? I always knew that Seth Rollins was the guy. I always knew that Seth Rollins was going to be the one that rise to the occasion. Everybody was on Dean Ambrose's dick back in the day. But look where Dean Ambrose is now. Jon Moxley. I mean, he might be the AEW champion, but look at what AEW is. You know what I mean? Edge's new name in AEW, add a rated R superstar, cope, is exactly what AEW is doing right now. They're coping with their position. Here they have their streaming deal on Max, right? But what are they going to put out? Their stuff is shit. AEW, when AEW first came out 5 years ago, I was too. I was excited for AEW. I wanted to see what they were going to offer in professional wrestling for the first time ever since 2001. Wrestling being back on the Turner stations, wrestling reclaiming that legacy that it had since the early 70s with the Turner networks. But it didn't really do anything. It didn't move numbers in the way it did. Then when everybody abandoned ship, Andrade went back, Punk went back, Cody Rhodes went back. Unfortunately, Luke Harper passed away. So everybody they were getting was either passing away or going back to the WWE. And then Vince McMahon leaves the WWE. They get rid of Vince McMahon, and Paul Levesque comes in, and he starts booking better. And then you start seeing WWE moving in a different way, right? And then the Wednesday Night Wars is completely dead because NXT blows blows AEW out of the water on Wednesdays. And then once again, like they did with WCW back in the day, WWE gained steam, and they came back and where they are today. So this is a new era, and AEW has to do a lot to compete with WWE. There's talk of Brock Lesnar possibly coming back, which I hope happens, because Brock has a lot to do. We can finally get that Brock and Gunther match, maybe for the World Heavyweight Championship. Who knows? WrestleMania 41 is stacked. I just hope that both WrestleMania 41 and the Super Bowl are safe this year, because the first event of 2025, major news events outside of professional wrestling and outside of football was, the two terrorist attacks where these two big American cultural events are going to happen. Both I consider both terrorist attacks: the cyber truck explosion in front of Trump's hotel by Matthew Livelsberger, right, and the terrorist attack in New Orleans, right on the day of the Sugar Bowl by Shamsuddin Jabbar in New Orleans. And we know the Super Bowl is taking place in New Orleans, and we know WrestleMania is taking place in Las Vegas. So the health and safety of the people that will be at the Super Bowl and at WrestleMania was the first things that came to my mind after this happened. But so hopefully WWE takes extra precaution in a city like Las Vegas come WrestleMania, and they take extra precaution, the NFL does, in New Orleans at the Super Bowl for both the football players and the attendees and the people that Kendrick Lamar will be performing at the Super Bowl in the halftime show. But speaking of, I guess radical Islam, I guess you could say this is the birthplace of radical Islam, definitely the birthplace of Islam, and definitely in the 1930s, the birthplace of radical Islam. Speaking of this country, Saudi Arabia, they still sponsor a lot of Islamist attacks, which is odd because they're our ally. And according to Vince McMahon last year, when he was at the Francis Ngannou Tyson Fury fight, it's the home of the WWE. It's not the real home of the WWE. New York is, but anyway. Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, will be hosting the Royal Rumble in 2026. Saudi Arabia, the first time ever the Royal Rumble is held outside of North America. First ever pay-per-view real PLE. Well, Crown Jewel's a PLE, but I'm talking about the big four pay-per-views: Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. The original four will be held outside of, in the Middle East ever. Not outside of North America, because they held 1992's SummerSlam in the UK, but ever in the Middle East. So Saudi Arabia still in their deal with WWE, obviously, and they'll be getting the Royal Rumble 2026. So what is this? What is since 2018 they've been doing the Women's Royal Rumble, but obviously, of course, like I said, the home of political Islam, the home of Islam in general, and Islam's attitude towards women. You know, I don't really watch any of the Crown Jewels, but I know Naomi wrestled at one of the Crown Jewels with Bailey, and they wrestled like in shirts all covered up. But given their modesty laws, like, what does this mean for the Women's Royal Rumble? Like, it's really weird. Like, we know they're not going to have real American beer on the canvas at the 2026 Royal Rumble. That's obvious because, I mean, alcohol is haram. We talked about in the other video, year in review for 2024, how Saudi Arabia is getting FIFA, right? That was announced right before 2024 closed out. So how soon before Saudi Arabia gets WrestleMania? You know, will Saudi Arabia get a WrestleMania before England gets a WrestleMania? Like, that would be pretty weird. But anyway, you know, and pray for the safety of WWE superstars there as well, because even though it's an Islamist country, a Salafist country, a Salafi country, you know, the strictest form of Islam, Wahhabist country, the first Wahhabist country, the home of Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, the founder of the Wahhabi sect. You know, in the late 1800s. Even though that's the case, most political Islamists are against Saudi Arabia and the reforms that Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, is doing. You know, trying to secularize the country, trying to diversify the economy, moving it away from oil. And they're against Western influence in Saudi Arabia because they consider, like, Saudi Arabia, the whole country to be the home of Islam, you know, the home of Islam, not just Mecca and Medina. Like, one of the reasons why Osama bin Laden attacked the World Trade Center was because he believed, and rightfully so, that American troops, infidel troops, kuffar, non-Muslims, were stationed in Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War, first Gulf War in the 90s. You know, so with WWE and even FIFA doing business with Saudi Arabia, with its anger, a lot of the terrorists, you know, that are Islamic extremists, and they want to do something crazy at one of these events. When you go to these events like the New Orleans New Year's Eve party thing on Bourbon Street, you have to be careful and you have to be cognizant of your surroundings, because there are so many crazy dangers out there. You know, it's particularly from these radical Islamic fundamentalists in the countries that the WWE is now doing business with. Saudi Arabia and FIFA is now doing business with, and boxing is now doing like Saudi Arabia is really trying to reach out to these major sports places, but this is only going to fly in the face of you know, these Islamic terrorists. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is only going to make them even more upset, because now you're putting women in the public spaces, things they don't want to happen. And we talk about it a lot on this channel, the major changes that are happening within the Middle East, how it's becoming more and more radicalized, with Syria becoming radicalized now. You know, and with the West becoming more and more right-wing too. You know, with the election of Donald Trump and the ousting yesterday of Justin Trudeau in Canada, they're becoming more and more right-wing, and they might be seen as more, and you know, the constant involvement with Gaza pissing off the Muslim world even more. So this could be very dangerous for WWE to be continuously engaging with these folks overseas in the Middle East, doing major events there where they could put their superstars and their fans at risk and their workers at risk doing shit like this. So I don't really know how I feel about this, but obviously it's all for money. You know what I mean? And it's dangerous. So we got to see how the women's side of the Royal Rumble goes down on 26, if they even do it. But that's what they're doing in Saudi Arabia. You know what I mean? That's what they're doing here on Netflix. You know, it's a new world we're living in, man. Crazy, crazy world for the WWE and even outside of the WWE. Outside of that, it was the four-year anniversary of January the 6th, 2021, the J6 riots. The Democrats called the J6 insurrection. This is going to be one of those things in history where, depending on your political affiliation, you look at it totally different. You know what I mean? If you're a Republican, you look at it as just a riot. You know, nothing really happened except for the death of that police officer and the death of one of the right-wingers, Ashley Babbitt. You know what I mean? That was there. But if you're a left-winger, you look at it, as Sonny Houston on The View said, one of the greatest calamities in American history, which I really don't get, because she compared it to Pearl Harbor or 9/11 or slavery or the Holocaust. Like, we're talking about major events in world history. J6 doesn't even rank with that. But anyway, that's the way she feels. But anyway, that's it for Raw on Netflix, guys. Peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see my next videos coming out. Love you.